This is the mind map for chemical calculations. Okay, let's consider this chemical equation. Hydrogen reacts with the oxygen gas to form water. So we need to balance this chemical equation. So there are two hydrogen atoms on the left hand side, two hydrogen atoms on the right hand side, so it's balanced. On the left hand side of the arrow, two oxygen atoms, and on the right hand side there is only one. So we put a 2 here. When we put a 2 here, there are 4 oxygen atoms on the right hand side, so on the left hand side we should put a 2 here as well. So at this point the chemical equation is balanced. Now for this chemical equation, we can read it in such a way that 2 mole of hydrogen gas reacts with 1 mole of oxygen gas, produces 2 mole of water. So 2 moles of hydrogen gas reacts with 1 mole of oxygen gas, and then to produce 2 moles of water. This is in terms of mole, so 2, 1, 2. So the coefficient in front of the chemical formula is actually the number of mole. Now in terms of mass, 2 mole of hydrogen gas, what is the mass? So we can actually make use of the triangle that we have learned previously. Mass, mole, mR. Okay, in order to find out the mass of 2 mole of hydrogen, we need to multiply 2, number of mole, with the mR for hydrogen, which is 2. And that would give you 4 grams of hydrogen. Then for oxygen, likewise, 1 times 32, that would give you 32 grams of oxygen. And then for water, so 2 times the mR for water, that will be 2 plus 16, and that would give you 36 grams of water. So this is in terms of mass. So the chemical equation is very important because it tells us a lot of information. First of all, will be the physical states of the reactants and products, okay, the state symbol, and as well as the relationship between the number of moles of reactants as well as the products in the reaction, the relationship between the number of moles of reactants and products. So you have 2, 1, 2. Okay, this is also known as the stoichiometry. Stoichiometry. And it is based on the law of conservation of mass. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, but can only change from one form to another. This is a law of conservation of mass. So if you look at the mass, right, you have 36 grams of reactants on the left hand side of the arrow, and on the right hand side of the arrow there will be 36 grams of products. So they must be equal. Okay, let's look at the example here. Calculate the mass of water produced if 4 mole of hydrogen burns in oxygen. So the first step is always write down the chemical equation. Sometimes the chemical equation is provided to you. In this question, it is not. So you have to write down the chemical equation. So this chemical equation, oxygen burns in hydrogen. Alright, I mean hydrogen burns in oxygen. So hydrogen, oxygen, then you get water is produced. See, calculate the mass of water produced. So water is the product. Hydrogen and oxygen are the reactants. So again, we need to balance the chemical equation, which we have already done it here. Okay, so this is the chemical equation. So that is the first step. Write down the balanced chemical equation. Second step would be to write down the information given in a question above or below the chemical formula. So in this case, you are supposed to find out the mass of the water. So you are supposed to find out the mass. And what other information is given? If 4 mole of hydrogen, 4 mole of hydrogen burns in oxygen. So this is the information given. Okay, So first step, write down the balanced chemical equation. Second step, write down the information given as well as the thing that you need to find below or above the chemical formula. Okay, the third step would be to look at the mole ratio. Okay, mole ratio for the chemical which the information has been provided to you, as well as for the chemical which you need to find. So in this case would be hydrogen and water. So the mole ratio is 2 mole of hydrogen, 2 mole of water, which is the same as 1:1. Okay, so in this case you have 4 mole of hydrogen here, 4 mole of hydrogen. So if the ratio is 2:2, so 4 must be to 4. So water must be 4 mole. And then you're supposed to find the mass of water. So the fourth step and the final step would be to convert the number of mole of water to the mass, which is mole times the mR. So mole, which is 4 mole here, times the mR. mR for H2O is 2 plus 16. And that would give you 72.0 gram. Always leave your final answer in 3SF. Okay, 4 steps. First step, balance chemical equation. Second step, write down the information above or below the chemical formula. Third step, the mole ratio. Fourth step would be to find the mass. Okay, let's look at example 2. You have 0.805 gram of zinc sulfate. So zinc sulfate, what's the chemical formula? Zinc is, this is ionic compound, metal and non-metal, zinc ion, Zn2+, sulfate, SO4 2-. So zinc sulfate would be ZnSO4. Was formed, so zinc sulfate is the product. When a piece of zinc reacted with excess sulfuric acid, so zinc and sulfuric acid are the reactants. So zinc, first step, write down the chemical equation, balanced chemical equation. Zinc, sulfuric acid, you must memorize the chemical formula for sulfuric acid. And what are the products? Products is zinc sulfate. Okay, what are other products? What is other product? Hydrogen gas was also produced. So hydrogen gas is H2, it's not H. Okay, then we try to balance it, and it is actually balanced. Okay, first step. Second step, write down the information given, the information provided in the question, as well as what you need to find above or below the chemical formula. So zinc sulfate, zinc sulfate is this guy. So 0.805 gram. When a piece of zinc reacted with excess sulfuric acid, hydrogen gas was also produced. Calculate the mass of zinc. Okay, this one should be off. Mass of zinc produced. So you have to find out the mass. Okay, this is second step. Third step, mole ratio. So mole ratio between what? The ratio between zinc, which is what you need to find, as well as the zinc sulfate. So zinc and zinc sulfate, which is 1:1. Okay, so zinc you need to find. How about zinc sulfate? How many mole is it? This is mole ratio, right? So you have to convert this 0.805 gram to the number of mole, which is mass divided by mR. So mass, which is 0.805 divided by the mR. mR for zinc sulfate. So you have to look it up in the periodic table. Zinc, the AR is 65, sulfur is 32, oxygen is 16, there are 4. So if you use your calculator to punch in the numbers, you should be able to find out that this number of mole is 0.005. Okay, so the mole ratio is 1 mole is to 1 mole. So zinc sulfate now is 0.05, so your zinc should be 0.05 as well. So 0.05 mole, because this is mole ratio. And final step, you're supposed to calculate the mass of this 0.05 mole of zinc, which is, how do you find mass? Mole times the mR. Mole times the AR in this case, which is 65, and that would give you 0.32 5 gram. Okay, again there are 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4.